the Italian Football Podcast.
Where do you think he will line up in the Juventus starting 11?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think there was a time where I think he popped onto the radar of clubs like Liverpool, and he'd gone on a little bit of a hot streak based on his skill set and was scoring more goals than he actually generally does score. And I think that lured people into sort of a false sense of believing that he was quite an attack-minded player, like almost like an attacking midfielder, sort of in the kind of Alexi McAllister role kind of thing. And it's actually not really the kind of profile of player that Thuram is at all. He is, I'd say, more of a replacement for Adrien Rabiot. You know, my thoughts on dear Adrien and his mother, and I noticed they finally left Juventus after signing one contract extension.
As for those of you who don't remember, there was beef between Jonathan and Veronique, which was incredibly entertaining. I'm sorry to say, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, she's nothing if not outspoken, especially when it comes to her son's best interests. But no, I mean, after the Euro, Rabiot, will be focused now on finding a new club, and Thuram has come in, and I would expect him to sort of be not necessarily strictly a like-for-like change, but roughly positionally. What really interests me, to be honest, is how Thiago Motta interprets this group of players that he now takes charge of. Thiago Motta, of course, who played alongside Rabiot at PSG, and how he sees their setup going forward. He's quite a modern thinking manager. There was a time as well where he was linked with PSG before that fantastic explosion onto the scene in terms of some of the top upcoming managerial talents by leading Bologna into Europe. So I think for me, Thuram will definitely be sort of roughly positionally a replacement for Rabiot. How sort of anchored he is in that midfield is something that only Motta will know at this moment in time. But I do think that he is a very interesting profile to be added to this Juve squad.
So, I mean, we've seen Thiago Motta play a 4-3-3, kind of. Where do you think in that midfield? Because, I mean, they're interested in cup miners. They've signed Douglas Luiz. Do you see them, all three of them, playing together?
Yeah, that's. I certainly think that Thuram and Luiz could be complementary. Obviously, of course, you have me on, and I'm an Aston Villa fan as well. And Douglas Luiz leaving leaves a big hole in the midfield. And what I would say is that even though he's not a defensive-minded player either, and he's a fantastic set-piece taker, I would expect Douglas Luiz, because of his importance usually to the manager's approach and style of play and sort of in-game intelligence, I would expect him to be the more centrally positioned midfielder in a 3, assuming that the Motta does go with a 3. So I would expect Thuram to probably go on one of the two sides. Obviously, that kind of shape is a bit more conducive to potentially being a diamond as well, if you wanted to go with two sort of target men or sort of focal points in the attack and then have an attacking midfielder behind. But I wouldn't say that Thuram is the guy who could fill that attacking midfielder position. That would be more Douglas Luiz.
Okay. So if we talk about, are there any stats or numbers that stand out? And we're not going to turn into some sort of a weird Twitter tactical empathy nonsense, but like, what are there anything in particular statistically, in your opinion, that stand out when considering him?
I mean, I think the one thing that will stand out, and I mentioned it earlier, is that people, I think, expect that Thuram scores and is directly involved in more goals than he actually is. Okay. He's not the kind of guy who's going to come and throw in, sort of 5 to 10 goals a season or 5 to 10 assists or 10 goal involvements over the course of a season. That's just not, it's not really how he's made to play. He did have that purple patch sort of 18 months ago or something like that, where he sort of scored more goals and was involved in more goals than he would usually. But, I think many fans, if that's what they're expecting, will be surprised. He's sort of a little bit more, I'm not going to say he's Thiago Motta-esque, because Motta is a player, when he was a player, was extremely cerebral, a fantastic reader and thinker of the game. Brilliant technically, but you wouldn't necessarily see his name there as providing an assist or scoring the goals. That kind of involvement was actually quite rare for him. And Thuram, although he doesn't have that same sort of brainy approach to football in the way that Motta did, he's not quite sort of at that metronomic level. But I believe he's of the profile that could eventually be turned into that kind of player over time. And that's why I find the idea of him playing under Motta so fascinating. And I think, the real sort of stats and areas of his game to look out on are sort of, the quality of the passes, how those passes contribute to the build-up of moves that lead to goals without actually being the one to provide the killer pass. He's more of an architect, I would say, in terms of the moves being created, helping to break up play. Is also not necessarily a strength of his game. He is somebody who can help the team, get a foot on the ball and then keep hold of the ball and build from the middle of the park, towards attack. So for me, I think that service between him and the attacking players, certainly, whether it's a number 10, whether it's the wide man who will be providing most of the ammunition for the attack, that is sort of where I would quantify Thuram's value best.